Intro. The definition of alchemy is as follows. 1. A medieval chemical science and speculative philosophy aiming to achieve the transmutation of the basic metals into gold, the discovery of a universal cure for disease, and the discovery of a means of indefinitely prolonging life. 2. A power or process that changes or transforms something into a mysterious or impressive way. The practices or the practitioners of financial alchemy that transformed the world of money in the 1980s. 3. An unexplicable or mysterious transmuting. Alchemist. Someone who transforms things for the better. Today, we recognize alchemy as a pseudoscience and give chemistry its rightful place as a serious scientific field. But the two terms initially overlapped in meaning before separating by the 17th century, just as astrology and astronomy did during the same period. Alchemy and alchemists are in fact older words than chemistry and chemist in English. Alchemists believed that lead could be perfected into gold, that disease could be cured, and that life could be prolonged through transmutation or a change of some essential element into a superior form. Their secretive experiments, usually involving heat and the mixture of liquids, led to the development of pharmacology and the rise of modern chemistry. The long route to English for alchemists began with the Greek word chemia, which probably came from the word chyma, fluid, derived from the verb chen, meaning to pour. It then passed to Arabic, which added its own definite article, al, the, to the Greek root. The word then passed from Latin to French before coming to English. Some other words derived from Arabic also retain the al in English, such as algebra, algorithm, and alcohol. In fact, the transformative liquid that was consistently being sought through experimentation by alchemists is another word with the Arabic al. Prefix elixir. This power to transform things for the better, real or imagined, led to figurative meanings for alchemy and alchemists. The history of alchemy. The medieval chemical science and speculative philosophy that focused on the attempt to change less valuable metals into gold to find a universal cure for disease and to discover a means of prolonging life indefinitely is called alchemy. It was practiced in much of the ancient world from China and India to Greece. Alchemists migrated to Egypt and were later revived in the 12th century Europe through translations of Arabic texts into Latin. Medieval European alchemists made some useful discoveries, including mineral acids and alcohol. The revival led to the development of pharmacology and to the rise of modern chemistry. The gold-making processes of alchemists were finally discredited, but not until the 19th century. Intro. The definition of esoteric is as follows. Intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a piece of specialized knowledge or interest. The definition of treasure is as follows. A quantity of precious metals, gems, or other valuable objects. When I was young, The word esoteric was a very foreign word to me. I read some esoteric books and had no idea what they were talking about. It seemed so complicated and intellectual. I must admit, I have a simple mind, yet with a simple mind, one can develop complex systems. During the 90s, our family moved to Maui. I got a job working for the Haleakala Observatory. Boeing was the subcontractor. The Air Force operates the Maui Space Surveillance Complex. The Air Force was tracking space debris and satellites. One of my first projects was a dome automation system. Imagine at midnight we would have a dome operator which would have a switch to move the dome clockwise or counterclockwise. During the winter, it would get extremely cold. The operator would be wearing a snowsuit. At times, during an important pass, they would doze off and fall asleep. I was instructed to automate this process. My friend Paul was charged with the overall hardware design, and I was assigned to the software side. The program was written in C++, which I was not familiar with. Anyway, we had a short timeline to pull this off. Paul and his crew installed barcode readers around the dome. We had an IBM pizza box that we used. The basic formula was we had to take the as, pole, and deck positions and calculate where the dome should move to. At times, we had to force the dome to go super fast, and we got to our destination. We had to slow down, and they stopped. We had to make fine adjustments along the way. When we first tested out the system, we would hear a hum when we were stationary. We quickly fixed this. The system was installed on time. The system was so successful that we had another dome that was required to have the same software and hardware installed. This book hopefully will break down esoterics that will make you easily understand the mechanics of discovering the treasures within. What is esoteric is quite simple if one explains it properly. This is a practical time where we can experience the true nature that exists inside of us. Intro. The definition of a puzzle is as follows. 1. To offer or represent to someone a problem difficult to solve or a situation difficult to resolve. Challenge mentally also to exert oneself, one's mind, etc. over such a problem or situation they puzzle their wits to find a solution. 2. Archaic, complicate, entangle. What is the greatest puzzle to solve in the universe? Signposts are all around you, yet humanity is texting on the freeway of life. This book contains many writings when I talk about the great puzzle of life. The world at large would be in a better place if we attempted to try to solve this puzzle. The solution exists inside of you. Nobody can solve the puzzle for you. Many people throughout the ages provided helpful hints, but you must use your own inner shovel to mine the gold within. That's how the game got set up. I most certainly didn't make the rules. Nobody can walk in your own shoes. Your life is custom designed. What works for you may not work for others. Hopefully, by reading this book, you may try to solve the puzzle of life.
Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a principle from philosophy. Suppose there exist two explanations for an occurrence. The more assumptions you have to make, the more unlikely an explanation is. We all live in a cosmic soup. Every quantum scientist knows that. Yet, why don't we perceive that? Wise men have been talking about that for thousands of years. They don't use the word quantum. Behind your breath lies the answer. It's as simple as that. We make it so complicated. In silence, one can perceive the ocean of life. Daily, close your eyes. You will solve this riddle. The more assumptions you make, the further away you get from the truth. The simpler assumptions you make, the closer you are to the truth. Being complicated is a state of mind. Being simple is a state from the heart. A child is simple and full of love. Modern day man is quite complicated and starts many wars. Simplicity leads to truth. Truth leads to simplicity. To make things complicated will never solve the problem. Even the most complicated software program is built up of simple solutions and algorithms. A wise man contemplates the impermanence of life. When a man understands the impermanence of life, he starts looking for the jewel within. The modern day world thinks that happiness exists externally. If the world is an impermanent and in constant change, how can your happiness be stable? "95% of your actions are dictated by your subconscious. How much are you running the show?" A wise man understands that he can reprogram the hardware, software, and operating systems within his being. An ignorant man will let the computer operate on self-control. A wise man will hesitate before acting upon an angry thought. How many people in prison regret the action they took instead of hesitating for just a second? It takes around 30 days for a habit. It takes around 30 days for a habit to be rewired into your neural circuitry. One who understands this can change his world. Small baby steps are needed along the way. One does not leap into infinity. You are the universe, and you just don't know it. If thy eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Quantum physics and the mysteries of old are both talking about the same thing. Without sophisticated computers, how did the ancient ones with such incredible ideas talk about the formation of the universe? I think, therefore, I'm confused. In silence, the mind learns slowly to slow down. A silent mind is the most precious mind. A mosquito mind constantly bites man. Events that happened many moons ago exist inside your body and mind. It takes less than a fraction of a second for you to be reminded of an event, whether it was good or bad. Holding on to anger is drinking your own poison. Present-day scientists confirm that statement today. Meditation is the key to discovering your true nature. Only looking externally will never solve your problem of finding happiness. A person who wanders has no destination to go to. A traveler in life knows the road to his destination. A wanderer would never find his soul. A traveler will discover his soul and go back home. A wise man blames no one, including himself. An ignorant man will always blame others for his troubles. Wisdom and information are not the same. Wisdom comes from within. Information are snippets of unreality. If there's a spectrum of darkness to light, wisdom and information would be at entirely different ends of the spectrum. See, about 1% of the light spectrum, yet we think we know it all. A wise man, day by day, moment by moment, tries to see the light behind all things. Truth is the consciousness of bliss. When the mind is absorbed in truth, the consciousness will be in bliss. Only a wise man comprehends this riddle. How can a fish drown in water? How can a man choke in his own words? One day, a dear friend said, "Do you know the meaning of Fletcher?" I did not. He said Fletcher means bullseye. To sin means to miss the mark. I like that. The disease is when the mind is not at ease. A mind that is not at ease will not be able to sleep well at night. Companies will work you to death if you allow them. I had a job interview once when they required you to work 60 to 80 hours a week. I said, I didn't come down to this planet solely to work, and I promptly left the interview. If you don't like your job, then leave. Find something that you love to do. And making money is more important than being in a job you hate. Your priorities are wrong. Shortly, we will be having several trillionaires. Are they satisfied with their money? No, they want more and more. On my travels around the world, I have seen people with absolutely no money, yet have a smile on their faces.
You know me, but you don't know me. I have many names. Some call me Gaia. Some call me Mother Nature. Some call me Panchakama. You have forgotten your connection with me. There was a time when we were in harmony with me. Nowadays, you have forgotten who you are and the connection you have with me. I am the mother of all on this earth. Many of the indigenous people around the world still have the connection with me. You call them primitive, yet they are highly advanced. You may have technology advanced, yet your spiritual and emotional growth is stunted. For thousands of years, you've been fighting wars with one another. You are sawing the branch that you sit on. Look at how you treat me. You have no respect. I'm not judging you. I just call a spade a spade. You are in the midst of one of the greatest transformations anywhere in the universe. It's happening right before you. Millions of people awaken up from their slumber. You're beginning to realize who you truly are. We are in the game together. You and I are one. I've been around for billions of years, and so has you. Yet today, you are still sleeping and are totally focused on getting by in life. Your ways are backwards. They don't work. Your mirror is cloudy. Every step you take, you are walking with me, yet you are oblivious to this. Your entire society is presently beating a drum that is out of tune. You think everything is well, yet you have forgotten our connection. You have forgotten your true essence. Anger is so pervasive today in your world. Everyone is angry with each other. It seems like in America, people are polarized. They don't listen to each other. In fact, many people have a tremendous amount of hate towards each other. I have love for all. That is my nature. I am patient and tolerant. I am kind. This is my nature. You have forgotten your true essence. Presently, you are a mixture of light and dark. You are going from darkness to light. I am trying to remind you how incredible you truly are. What if you had an Earth Mother who has been here since the dawning of time? I hold you in my arms, yet you don't realize it. You think you are alone. Because of this and your free choice, you have at times tremendous pain. It's hard to be truly happy when your happiness is external. You are like leaves blowing in the wind. You are happy and then you are sad. You get angry when you're in a traffic jam. The wise man would see a traffic jam as an opportunity to meditate and be aware with the eyes open. One would feel gratitude and remember our divine connection. You see, without being connected to your true nature, you will have a hard time navigating in this world. You really won't be in harmony with me or the universe. Need I say more? Take a look at the world around you. Is it in harmony with nature? You have a president who is going backwards in time, undoing all the environmental goods. He is totally out of sync with me. You see, a strong ego can be quite damaging. A man must develop kindness and humility to gain true wisdom. True wisdom comes from within. You know when to smile in the face of adversity. You have nothing to prove. I am what I am. I do not judge. I will give sincere and honest opinions. You may not agree with me. That is your choice. But I am your mother. Remember, there were probably times when you didn't listen to your worldly mother's advice. At some point in time, you did something and you thought, I wish I would have listened to my mother's advice. I wouldn't be in this certain situation. Well, life is a series of beautiful lessons to learn. We will never stop learning. Listen to the various messages I have for you. I am speaking directly to you. You are on the verge of waking up from your slumber. Intro. The definition of a broken record is as follows. Use especially in similes to refer to a person's constant and annoying repetition of a particular statement or opinion. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, let me repeat, it will be difficult to do well without attending classes regularly. Yet the world at large has fragments of a broken record all over the place. Absolute harmony is the state mankind is searching for. Yet mankind is not aware of it. We are playing the same record over and over again. Humanity is having a hard time being in a state of harmony. Chaos exists outside and inside of us. Presently, the United States just had an invasion from its own people at the Capitol building. What is the truth is considered lies. What is lies is considered truth. For many, discrimination is out the door. This is from ABC News. Trump's voter fraud lies encouraged a riot. GOP allies are still giving them oxygen. Republicans, including Senator Josh Hawley, has condemned the violence but hasn't backed down from baseless claims of fraud and irregularities. This broken risk record exists in all areas of our life. This exists even from our subconscious. Scientists know that 95% of our actions stem from our subconscious. This is from Bruce Lipton. Is there a way to change subconscious patterns? Yes, you can reprogram the subconscious mind. All of us got programmed when we were very young, and the programs even started before we were born. We were programmed already in the uterus, so the program occurred before you were born, and therefore you can't tell me where all the programs are that you have. You weren't even conscious at that point. So then I say, how will I know what the programs are? You don't need to go to a psychiatrist to figure it out. The reason why it's simple is that 95% of your life comes from the subconscious program. So by definition, your life is a printout of your subconscious programs. So the things that you like and that can come easily into your life are there because you have a program that allows them to be there. In contrast, anything that you have to work hard at, put a lot of effort into, and anything you have to struggle for to make it happen is a result of your program not supporting that. So if you're trying to find a relationship or you can never get into a relationship and you're thinking it's not in my fate to be in a relationship, then this is not true. It's because whatever programs your mother and father and family had about relationships is not supportive. And the second reason is that you play these programs 90% of the time and you don't see them. So that means at least 95% of the time you were sabotaging yourself and you don't see it. And therefore, you never understood why your relationships were not working. So if people want to know what their programs are, I say what in your life comes easy to you is there because you have programs to support it. Anything you struggle to get to, that is because you have programs that don't support that. And that's how you know what programs you want to change. So you ask, where are the troubles in my life? If they exist in relationships, for example, you know you have to change your beliefs about relationships, and then you can work on yourself. So first is about recognizing the patterns come from programming, and then you can change them. Now there's always the belief that you can talk to your subconscious mind, and people try that, and then they find themselves playing their programs again, and they get mad at themselves, and they get frustrated, because they think, I keep talking to myself and it's not changing. You have to remember you are like an entity in the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind is just like a machine. It records, pushes a button, plays back. So if you're trying to talk to the subconscious after there is somebody in there, it's frustrating because there is nobody in there to listen. That's not how the subconscious changes, and that's why most people have a lot of problems and they get mad at themselves when it doesn't change. Well, that is simply not how it learns. So that two minds learn differently. The conscious mind is called creative and can learn by reading a self-help book or going to a lecture, watching a video, or reading an article. It is creative. It goes, I have an idea. Now I change my mind. The subconscious mind is a habit mind. And the most important thing about a habit mind is you don't want it to change very quickly because otherwise habits fall apart. So it is resistant to change. This is the first thing we have to realize. It's not as easy to change as the creative mind. So how do I change my subconscious mind? How does it learn? Number one, the first 7 years, the mind is operating at a low vibratory frequency like hypnosis. So this is one way of changing the program. Number two, after you are 7, you form habits by repeating something over and over and over again. Practice, repeating, practicing. An example, if you read a self-help book, the conscious mind understood it, but the subconscious mind learned nothing from it because he only read it once, and that's not how it learns. If you repeat the message of the book over and over and over again and behave that way, the subconscious mind will learn a new behavior. So it is all about habitation. When you make a practice out of something every day, repeat it over and over again. So those are the two main ways, hypnosis and habitation. Then there's a third way, which is new, which is called energy psychology, and it activates the brain to be in a state of super learning. If you engage in super learning, you can rewrite subconscious programs in about 10 minutes. Something you have your whole life can be rewritten in 10 minutes. Now there are a bunch of different techniques, but they all function all about the same matter. It pushes the record button of the subconscious mind so you can download new data very fast. On my website, brucelipton.com, under resources, there's a list of about 20 different energy psychology processes, all which are effective and can help rewrite subconscious beliefs in a short period. Intro. The definition of war is as follows: a state of armed conflict between different nations or states or different groups within a nation or state. Emotionally, we are still in the kindergarten stage of emotions. Many of our leaders are spoiled brats. The world is still in a tizzy that Russia attacked Ukraine. Just think, one person can cause so much chaos. How can he sleep at night when an entire country is going through hell? How would he like it if another country invaded his country and a rainfall of ballistic missiles rained upon him? Not only that, but a caravan of troops and tanks 40 miles long was approaching his capital. Let's keep this simple. Either we stop fighting each other, or we will blow ourselves up. It's as simple as that. Mind you, there have been plenty of civilizations out in the universe who have done that. Only we can solve the puzzle. The only savior is humanity saving itself.
Intro. Once upon a time, there was a land of dragons, the land of dragons. All story tales start with once upon a time. I started as once upon a time, yet I'm going to have to change what I said. In the world of dragons, there is no time and no space. This world has been existing for literally trillions of years, way before our universe has even been conceived. The world of dragons existed. Our universe is only about 15 billion years old, give or take. The dragon's world has been around for trillions and trillions of years. Our present day universe is only a blink of an eye in eternity. Many people say this is all fiction, This is all a figure of your imagination. This is coming from your subconscious mind. Did you know your subconscious mind runs the show in your life? 95% of your actions are dictated by your subconscious mind. It is literally running the show, and yet we think we are running the show. My brother and John were discussing the dragons. Even Carl Jung put his 2 cents in and said that the dragons are an archetype symbol for humanity. My twin brother John chipped in and said, dragons are the symbol of enlightenment. I like that. I'm going to steal that. Just think about this entire universe and entire creation is going from darkness to light. Everything is changing and morphing. Civilizations come and go. They disappear like the thief into the night. The same challenges we have of going from darkness to light, the dragons had many moons ago. They went through their tumultuous times. They almost destroyed themselves. Just take a look at my book Dragon Tales and see the transformation of the dragons go from darkness to light. The Western dragons never changed and never matured, and therefore, in the end, they were shot down one by one by the dragon hunters. In the East, dragons is a precious symbol that can be seen throughout the Far East. Dragons represent hope for mankind. Can you imagine if you were created trillions of years ago and you practiced the art of meditation and self-reflection for trillions of years? What kind of wisdom do you think you would have? You would be humble because you know you can never rest on your laurels. One must be humble in the face of the vast universe. Many of the great masters were trained by dragons trillions of years ago. It's funny, you've been trained by a dragon for trillions of years, and yet you are born on planet Earth. It's almost like you have to start all over again in your learning process. I find them quite fascinating. The great masters learn how, when they go to sleep, to go into the world of the dragons and simply rejoice in the silence that is there. Modern day scientists would probably say this is the quantum field. In that field are perfect peace and perfect bliss. Each one of those great masters had vast problems to face during their day. Mankind really doesn't like someone to recommend to them how to improve their lives. The theme, "Don't tell me what to do," is prevalent. This is still true today. At times, you could use the state of the chaotic world to your advantage. I have been there, done that. When one sees that this world is chaotic, one looks for a way out of the situation. The Kabbalists say to have your feet on the ground and your head in heaven. This is what the dragons teach. It is the same thing trillions of years ago and today. Mind you, they didn't have the means to create things with their arms, but they still had the means to create anything with their mind. The mind is either your best friend or your worst enemy. Currently in this world, I would say it's our worst enemy. I look at the state of the affairs today, and it doesn't look good. Yet, I also see the other side of the coin. Millions of people are waking up from their slumber. These are exciting times. Even if you believe in dragons or not, that is not the point. The point is you are the piece of the puzzle. If you want this world to change for the better, you must become part of the solution. You're either the problem or the solution. You can't sit on the fence any longer. The world is going through difficult times. We must learn the principles of being in harmony with the earth and the universe. We must stop being consumers of this land and be protectors of this land. We are sawing off the branch we are sitting on. We are oblivious to the actions that we take daily. We are in the video game of life, and yet we don't even know this game exists. The dragons and the great masters have been playing this game for trillions of years. You have been playing this game for trillions of years. The sad thing is, when you come down to earth, you forget all the knowledge and wisdom and play the silly game of life. One gets so involved in the video game of life that they forget the jewel exists inside of them. This game is quite easy to play if you know the rules and you practice them daily in your life. What an opportunity to connect to the source that is keeping you alive. Welcome to the world of dragons. You are blessed if you embark on this precious journey. Intro. I am in a state of awe. Signposts of God are all around us and in us. We are so busy texting on the freeway of life that we don't even see the signs that are everywhere. A while ago, my brother John sent me a link called The Christ Oil. I'm really interested in seeing all the various alchemy practices that exist around the world. This human body is so intricate, and yet the secrets are all around us. The secrets are in clear sight if you are open-minded. One of my major models is that you are your own chemistry set. Nothing can be further from the truth. Your life is created by the chemicals that only you produce. Nobody else produces these chemicals for you. Well, maybe when you take Western medicine, you take a drug that has side effects. Yet every single thought you have, a chemical gets released into your bloodstream. This has been documented by scientists in the last 20 years or so. I find it fascinating that we see less than 1% of the light spectrum, yet we think we are so advanced. Look at the world today, and you will see we are off balance. We need to recalibrate all the systems externally and internally. We are a ship without a rudder. Yet this human body contains the operating system, hardware, and software. They have been there all your life. The problem is we have never turned on the computer. We look for happiness externally, then yet we look for trillions of years and we won't be able to find it. That is a fact. Western scientists has come so far in the last 20 years. They have mapped out the mind-body connection. So much incredible work is done in this field. This book will go through the systems that have been taught for thousands of years and the latest scientific research on this subject. I'm amused by the various different procedures producing sublime chemicals in the human body. It seems to me the entire universe exists inside of you. Grunac once said, everyone knows that the ocean contains drops of water, but only a wise man understands that a drop contains the entire ocean. Welcome to the mysteries of the universe that exists inside of you. Each one of the systems are so incredible and marvelous. Just think, the map of the universe exists inside of you. And what are you doing about it? Most of us are so locked into our day-to-day routines that we never stop for a moment. Only through entering silence can one understand what I'm talking about. This is not a theory. This is so much more. There is so much hope today. Dr. Joe Dispenza said it recently that only 10 years ago, most of his audience just wanted to have theories or philosophy. Today, the times have changed, and people want a direct experience to the quantum field. Scientists are blown away because they see the first-hand effects of the latest scientific equipment. What is occurring in this room? Millions are miracles are occurring. Yet, are they miracles? Scientists discover that so many unknown and unique chemicals gets released into the bloodstream and thereby cure illnesses that have troubled the individual for years. We are on a precipice that we understand the quantum field and our relation to it. In essence, we are all one. The goal of all the systems I have studied said the same thing. Mind you, they have a different process, yet the results are one and the same. We are all scientists and mystics. This is our true nature. The laboratory exists inside of you. You can morph and change if you like. The tools are out there today. Many of these tools in the past were forbidden for the common man to have. Times have changed. The world needs to unite. If we don't unite, then we will go down the rabbit hole that we are on. We all saw enough. We are sawing off the branch that we are sitting on. We have insurmountable problems in this world today. With any problem, there is a solution. You are a piece of the puzzle. You are needed to put your piece of the puzzle into the puzzle of life. The goal of any civilization is to go from darkness to light. When a civilization refuses to embrace the light over time, the civilization will simply disappear and never return again. War is obsolete. It always has been obsolete. The reason we go to war is because we don't know our true nature. We have not tamed the mind. The mind is the most difficult thing to conquer in the universe. We are at a kindergarten level when it comes to our state of mind. Mind you, a kindergartner is more innocent and pure than our state of mind. The days of bullying, mockery, fighting, and all sorts of chaotic behaviors is over. We can change for the better. As I said many times before, the chemistry set lies inside of you. Take a look at your actions. Take a look at your emotions. Take a look at your thoughts. By doing so, you will see practically the results in your day-to-day affairs with this world. Your emotional state and mental state determines the actions that you take in life. Just think, if you're unhappy and you think, if I become a billionaire, I will be happy. Yet, you may acquire $1 billion, but in your present state of unhappiness, you still will be unhappy with $1 billion. $1 billion brings another set of problems more profound than you ever imagined. Happiness is a state of mind. If you think that happiness exists externally, then you will be unhappy the rest of your life. The wise man contemplates and ponders over the meaning of life. The ignorant man just goes on his merry way without ever questioning the meaning behind these words. I'm not sure why man is so lethargic in life. Shouldn't this be common sense? Man has been in strife for thousands of years, yet we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. We are getting strangled by our technology. Our technology is supposed to make life easier. Instead, it makes life more complicated. For example, people are married to their phones. That used to be a fine line between your working life and personal life. This is no longer the case. Technology is placing us in a box where we are trapped in. I find it fascinating that the mass social media organizations realize that we are our own chemistry sets. Unfortunately, they hire the brightest minds today. Their goal is to make you addicted to their platform so they can make more money. They purposely cause you to be more addicted to their platform than a cocaine addict. I'm not kidding you when I say this. I have written a book called Pandora's Box, which explains this in more detail. The science of discovering your inner chemistry lies inside of you. Every single moment you're either creating chemicals which are good for you or chemicals which will ultimately kill you. This human body can live much more longer than we think. At times, I think it is a miracle that we are still alive today. In the United States, we spend more money on health care than any country in the world. Each year, we have to spend billions more. Each year, the population is getting sicker and sicker. Almost everyone is pre-diabetic and not knowing it. A ticking time bomb exists inside of us. We have lost touch with nature and the universe. Many people would probably say, who cares? Well, the more a society is distant from nature and the universe, the more chaotic the society will be. Common sense is uncommon, and yet we think we have common sense. We are wearing blinders over our eyes. We think we can see clearly and properly. I don't want to be an alarmist, but the ship we are on has a hole in it. We need to fix it ASAP. You may laugh at this. Millions of people are waking up from their slumber. There is great hope. ponder this over, remember, you are a piece of the puzzle. Intro. A few months ago, my wife Barbara said, let's watch this YouTube video called Seattle is Dying. This YouTube video has an incredible effect on me. I started thinking, this is not only Seattle's problems, but the entire West Coast problem. My daughter Halia lives in a small town in southern Oregon. They also have the same homeless problem. Mind you, millions of dollars are being spent to try to solve this problem. I decided to start from Vancouver, Canada, and work my way down to Southern California. This problem exists all over. This problem exists in our entire country. I started to research to see what other countries are doing with this problem. I found out that the Scandinavian countries' mission for the last 10 years is to severely reduce homelessness in their countries. For example, Norway has reduced it by 60% in only 10 years. Norway makes it a provision in its constitution that having a place to live is a birthright. I work on many different fronts. In the past 10 years, I've always been interested in the happiness index for rating countries around the world. Each country is rated on the state of happiness of the citizens. I find it quite fascinating that the Scandinavian countries are the number one in the world. They take up the top 8 out of 10 spots. Israel and New Zealand are among them. The United States was 19th on the list. It seemed to me the higher a country is in the ratings, the more progressive the social programs are. The Scandinavian countries are extremely innovative when it comes to education, housing, and prison reform. How would you like to go to school and never get homework? Kids would love that. Many Scandinavian countries do this, and yet they are the most educated kids on the planet. In our society, we burn out kids, so that consequently, there is no joy in learning. Competition is the greatest force that they use. You are fighting against your fellow students to obtain success. The Scandinavian countries believe that cooperation with one another is the answer. Big difference. When it comes to prison reform, the United States prison system is built by for-profit corporations. The longer you're in, the more money they will make. They have no incentive to rehabilitate. Punishment is their means. The Scandinavian countries take another approach, and is not through punishment. It is teaching a man how to fish. It is teaching a man to learn the tools to succeed in society. They take a human approach. They take an approach of dignity. They believe if you treat someone with respect, they will treat you with respect. Inside our private systems in America, there is a war between the prisoners and the prison guards. Not only that, but prisoners fighting one another. In that kind of environment, no wonder when they get out, They return to prison. They don't have the skills to be good human beings in society. There's a saying that the more you paid attention to something, the more attention it pays to you. In the United States prison system, it is designed against you to heal oneself. I hope you enjoy this book and will ponder it over. There are many lessons for us to learn. Without kindness, you may have the greatest plan, but it will fail if it is done without kindness. Kindness is the foundation of life. If you want to see what a lack of kindness does in our society, take a look at the homeless epidemic in America today. We are the richest nation on earth, and yet 1 out of every 38 children is living in the streets. What does that say about our priorities? We spend about 60% of our budget on the defense industry. We seem to put more emphasis on war than in helping our fellow man. The United States has lost touch with its citizens. The Scandinavian countries still have their problems. They are striving to overcome them practically and consciously. In the United States, the top political officials pay only lip service to this. It seems to me they make laws that benefit the rich. The following YouTube video comes from the Peace Education Program, a worldwide program dedicated to bringing peace. This is a highly successful program in our prison systems around the world today. It is quite innovative and highly successful in the outcome. Many prison systems today are using this program to help solve their problems. Colombia for decades have had 2 rival gangs fighting. This has led to much bloodshed in the country. This program helps them to reconcile their differences and put their weapons down.
Harry farts. It's 2:13 in the morning. I've been sleeping, meditating for an hour. I was thinking and contemplating about the web of life with Harry farts. I first met Harry in LA in 1976, about 40 years ago. It wasn't until the late 70s did we come in contact with each other again. We both moved to South Florida in the late 70s. We were both involved with the same teacher. At that time, Harry was running a tree cutting business. It was great business. There was always plenty of work. Harry hired me and we became good friends. At that time, windsurfing took off in America. Harry took up windsurfing. He invited me to his house, and in his backyard, I learned how to windsurf. I bought a board and it was love at first sight. John Meyer and I were windsurfing buddies. During certain seasons, the wind would howl and you would have the time of your life. I didn't see Harry for a while. One day I bumped into him and he told me he finished a year course at the Computer Science Institute. He took basic Fortran and COBOL. I always knew I was going to be involved with computers. Even at a young age, I knew that. To make a long story short, I'm still involved 35 years later. So Harry was a catalyst. Here's the definition. In chemistry, a substance that causes a chemical reaction to occur, but is not itself involved in the reaction. Note, the term catalyst is often used to refer to the prime agent of any change. She was the catalyst for the reorganization. I find it fascinating that life's events helping you to be at the right place and right time. Synchronicity was there.
Harry gave me the impulse to enroll and start an incredible career. Yet it doesn't stop there. Harry was one of the ones who told me about Mafu. Fast forward a few years. Barbara and I moved into a house with Linda Graham. Linda's ex-boyfriend was Don Rockman, who in the future, 25 years later, provided the music for my first poetry music CD. It's featured on this site. Yeah, guess who's living next door? Harry Marks. Harry made a ton of money selling computers and moved to Sedona. This was in 1987. In 1991, my family and I moved to Hawaii for 6 glorious years. I got a software engineering job at Maui Space Surveillance Site. My wife and daughter went to Maui, and I went to Portland, Oregon for a few weeks. I had a contracting job I was going to work on. In Portland, I get a call from Harry, and he tells me that Mafu was going to give a 3-day retreat in Ashland, Oregon. He was teaching about ancient Vedic meditation techniques. Now that's a subject I love and dear to my heart, so I went. In 1999, I started working with Charles Schwab as a senior software engineer. At that time, our family was living in Penn Valley, California. I was a telecommuter. Now, Penn Valley internet connection wasn't very good. In fact, it was horrible. You had to use a modem. So I started to look for a community that had a great internet connection and a great high school for my daughter. Well, Ashland, Oregon just recently installed the whole town with fiber optics. Ashland High was an incredible school for my daughter. Guess what? Harry was still living there. During 2000 to 2008, we spent a lot of time seeing Mafu. He liked me. When we first moved there, one day he got off the stage and came up to me and gave me his initiation jacket. This jacket he worn for many of his initiation. I was honored. At that time, I also was involved in a mystery school and used that jacket for the initiations. For many people, they think that channeling was a fake. Well, I met and talked to Mafu many times. We had a relationship that was deep. Like any relationships, you know one another. Yet, there were numerous times I saw Penny, who channels Mafu, and said hello. She had no idea who I was. In fact, I think I spoke to her once when she was reading off the list of attendants for a seminar and said hi to each one. One day I saw her and Rob Spindler was with her. I said hi, and I was walking away. She whispered to Rob, "Who's that?" Rob said, "That's Richard Fletcher." That really gave me a sign that I had a relationship with Mafu. How can you have a relationship with someone when you never interacted with them? So it makes perfect sense for Penny to say, "Who's that? We have never interacted before." What I liked about his group, that Mafu taught about kindness. He taught about compassion. He talked about meditating for the whole planet. He taught universal truths. The universe is kind. That is its nature. Mafu is kind. That is his nature. As human beings, our true nature is kindness. It is just covered up. So here was a group practicing universal truths of love and compassion. It wasn't just words. Mafu was an incredible drummer. Imagine during the winter, it's snowing, and you're on top of a mountain inside of an ashram. It's nighttime, and the wind is howling. Mafu is on stage beating these huge Japanese taiko drums. It's a sight to see. At that time and place, you can be in some remote monastery on top of a mountain in the Himalayas at night. Now, back to Harry. As you can see, Harry has had a tremendous impact in my life. Harry is very kind. In Sedona, I had little to my name, and Harry would treat me to lunch. Gary doesn't say much, like myself at times. He doesn't preach. He just smiles. He has nothing to prove. He loves to meditate. I know he is having a great experience, but he doesn't talk about it. Yet you can see it from his eyes. He is humble. He has served the foundation for meditative studies for over 25 plus years. I call him a few times each year. It's good to connect with a dear friend. Friendships are God's way to connect to Him. Imagine we are the universe, yet we have forgotten that fact. Friendship is God's way of saying, I love you. Treasure your friends. We all have an aching soul that's trying to find its way home. Friendships help soothe the soul. My dear friend John Slowski, Matt Rauch, and I developed on Maui.com in 1996. It was quite a revolution for its time. John did all the graphics for the site. Since then, John has been on the forefront of graphics design. Check out Slowski.com. We developed 3 virtual towns in Maui, Makua, Paia, and Lahaina. Imagine back then, we didn't have Google walkthrough of towns. John and I developed something similar to what we have today. For example, I took photos of the towns in Maui. John then stitched together the photos. Back then, Burrow, virtual reality markup language, was just taking off. By the way, it didn't make it. We created virtual walkthroughs of these towns. You can stroll down the streets and go into surfboard shops and art galleries. You can even buy things. Years later, we have Google Maps. Well, instead of a person walking down the street, they have this car with a built-in camera. They could capture images of a town in Venice. Charles Schwab, Senior Staff Web Developer, 1999 to 2009. Charles Schwab, San Francisco, California. Developed, maintained, and upgraded cutting-edge financial industry software. Created .NET web-based software for operations and brokers. Charged with all phases of development, including database design, store procedures, and jobs. Pat, lead developer. Build a program called PAT, which tracks all transfers of authorization, POAs, going out for a broker when they leave the company. Each broker signs an agreement saying they won't take any clients with them when they leave the company. This program tracks all ex-employees for a certain period of time, depending on their warning level. It will send out an email when the threshold is met. The legal department has used this tool for bringing lawsuits toward the ex-employees who have violated their contract. In the first month that this was put into production, we found one ex-broker. They had $150 million of assets which left the company to the new company where he is now presently working. Built a series of reports using MS reporting services that they use daily, written in C#, .NET 3.5, Team Foundation Server, JavaScript, Ajax, Microsoft SQL Server, Teradata, SharePoint, and Visual Studio. This software project has resulted in Schwab not having to go to court to protect their clients. Par Letters, lead developer, generated custom letters to be sent out for various rate changes. Built first a custom tool where the broker has to custom build the letters. The second phase automatically creates the letters on a database job. This system saves Schwab 40 hours a week in input alone in the San Francisco office. No longer does a rep need to input the letters. C#, Microsoft SQL, SharePoint, WikiLeaks, .NET 2.0, Team Foundation Server, and Visual Studio 2005. Pricing Desk, lead developer. This program tracks in a queue all pricing changes requested for a client and is part of a web-based software tool on each broker's desktop. Each request is reviewed by the pricing and analyst team for approval. Business Calculator, lead developer. This is a tool utilized by the brokers to calculate naked spreads and straddles, and it's part of each broker's desktop tools. Is developed in JSP, Java, JavaScript, WebLogic Server. Converted calculator to C# using JavaScript, SharePoint, Visual Studio 2.5, and .NET 2.0. RPM program. This program calculates how much Schwab makes for each account. If a client calls for a discount, this tool displays around 30 key areas displaying how much profitability is made on the account. As a co-developer of this program, we won prestigious awards presented by Charles Schwab himself. Stock market game. Developed a stock market game using Java and WebLogic. The game was used to determine a person's portfolio in real time. The game was used to see who the top teams in Schwab were and the top brokers. Each player was given $100,000 of play money, and over a 3-month span, Schwab could see who was the winner and all the strategies used. Here's comments from employees that work with Richard. Dan, Senior Project Manager, Vice President of the Bank of the West. I worked with Richard on several crucial efforts at Charles Schwab. Richard was the primary developer and contact representing his technology group on the projects I managed. He was adept at interpreting the business requirements, which were often in flux. Richard could be relied upon to foresee the potential risks and helped us to mitigate them before they became an issue. Most impressive about Richard was his ability to work independently, relying on his own research to find the right sources of data in a highly complex organization. The result was that Richard developed a brilliant tool that allows Schwab to stem the historical asset attrition issue that costing the firm tens of millions of dollars. Maurice, creator of things at M.W. Wright. Humility and intelligence are the first 2 words that come to mind when I think of Richard Fletcher. We worked together on the same development team for a number of years. In addition to his affable nature, what sets Richard apart from other developers is his discipline around coding. Whether it's documentation, technical project management, or coding itself, Richard is better than anyone when it comes to identifying and implementing the shortest, most efficient path from point A to point B. Win Shaw. Working with Richard and his web development team was a breath of fresh air. Richard worked with me on several web development projects over the period of about 5 years. He asked the right questions, was able to converse in easily understood terms to me, stated more technical development language for his own team, and always found ways to find a creative solution to address our needs. The results Richard and his team delivered allowed for significant productivity gains across multiple business units. Paul, I have had the pleasure of working with Richard for 8+ years and can't say enough about his contribution for the success of our team. Richard has a tremendous work ethic and produces quality solutions that usually exceed the expectations of the business partner. Richard has been a consummate team player and is very quick to offer his help and extensive programming knowledge with others in any capacity. Additionally, he is able to grasp easily the needs of the end users and quickly develop top quality, high-impact applications utilizing the most current technologies. I would recommend Richard to anyone looking for a proven top-level performance. Eric, software application engineer at Charles Schwab. I've worked with Richard closely on the same team throughout the last 9 years or so. His extensive experience coding and his ability to understand the business makes for an excellent combination. In addition, during my time working with him, I've known him to be a person of integrity and intelligence, as well as someone who brings a positive attitude in his daily efforts. Richard has made a strong contribution to our programming team, and I recommend his work in this capacity. I worked for Charles Schwab for almost 10 years. They laid off around 12,000 in a 10-year period. I loved my job. It was extremely creative. I won various awards and even was presented one by Charles Schwab himself. There was a great team that I worked with. Unfortunately, I survived 10 out of 11 layoffs. My last project would save the company billions of dollars. Everyone who worked on that project got laid off. I was given a very generous severance package on the condition I wouldn't sue over age discrimination. I spent a few weeks looking for a job. Find this job below. I worked on this project for about 6 months. The software was written for the salesmen at Panasonic. Imagine the salesmen going to Walmart and they would have a software program where they would have sales projects for the various items Panasonic would sell. There are many different factors involved. I created temporary data storage where when the salesman went to a store box, they could upload their business to the online server. Unfortunately, this was during the recession. Panasonic lost over $1 billion in a quarter, and the project never got released. I was laid off. Grin. Flexes and Stillhead, senior staff web developer for Stillhead Advertising. I was the lead developer. I created a forecasting desktop application for Panasonic using Adobe Flex, MS SQL, SQLite web services, and PHP. Flexes. I love working with Flexes. My salary went down by half of what I was making with Charles Schwab. I worked with Chris Fossey, who was from Canada. He was a bright young guy and a pleasure to work with. Every day we would take walks around town. I've been building next generation medical insurance prototype software using Adobe Flex, Pure MVC, Microsoft SQL, Web services. Develop common base code for desktop and web applications. Developed and maintained $8,000 to $1 million medical insurance software program working in C# and Visual Basic. Built a claims web portal in Microsoft MVC using Microsoft Entity Model and linked to SQL. Built WCS servers. Converted quantum choice applications to be 508 compliant. During my time at Lexus, we sold our house. We made a decent profit. About 5 years before, our house jumped from $340,000 to $600,000 in 2 years. Crazy. The Ashland market was dictated by the Northern California market, wild mood strings, which unfortunately exist today. In Ashland, 3% of the market is not rented out. Rents have skyrocketed. One day, I got a phone call and I was asked, "Do you want to do a phone interview?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Anyway, I did this interview, and about 30 minutes later, my wife said, "You got the job." And I said, "What job?" This is how we ended up in Oakenham Park, Kansas. I'm not sure how stable it is being a government contractor for the government. If you're a government employee, your job is really secure. If you are a contractor, well, here's my story. I was in charge of a program where once a week, various livestock insurance was being sold. For example, at 10 a.m. Central, on a Tuesday, the doors would be open to accept live orders. We usually run around $3 million of insurance before the money would run out. My job was to make sure that the doors were open exactly on time and not a minute before. It was exciting to watch. It was like a mini stock market. Anyway, in March 2013, the government was having financial problems, and I got laid off. Here's some remarks by Mike Reed, who was the lead engineer. Richard is highly experienced and dedicated to working with the latest technologies to maintain his edge. He has a strong ability to translate business requirements into practical solutions. While Richard and I were never working on the same team, our teams needed crossed a number of times. I could trust that when Richard was involved, the job would get done, and would get done right. Richard is a good soul. Is the type of teammates you value both personally and professionally. So I've worked on EDAX, an online program for buying livestock insurance for the USDA. Built a fire watcher program while monitoring fires coming in to decide starting times for the AIP's buying livestock insurance for farmers. Automated a manual authorization process which allows AIP agents to modify key data with a special key. This was a time-consuming process which involved different groups inside the IT department. Received secret clearance. Heartland Crop Insurance. Well, I got this job in a few weeks. Heartland Crop Insurance is the agent who's responsible for paying claims to farmers. I was only there for a short period of time. In October 2013, Ted Cruz and his crew shut down the government for a period of time. Usually claims are paid 50% by the government and 50% by the agent. During the month of October, the government stopped paying its bills. Well, guess who got laid off? I was a contractor for Heartland Crop Insurance. Worked on AR payments, developed accounts receivable payment system to track on clients' insurance payments, developed the back-end portion of inserting and updating data from the UI to the database. Commissions, created both the front end and back end to create a batch of commissions for specific agents, ability to sign up and cut checks. Interest, create the UI and back end to generate monthly interest due on all our overdue policies. Refund list, worked on the front end and back end to create a refund system. USDA, Booz Allen. I worked with 3 other individuals with Booz Allen. They were a delight to work with. We maintain a GIS mapping system for all the farms in America. We worked on enhancement and fixing bugs. Our team always looked at the future. Microsoft in a few years was not going to support the browser the USDA was using. The Esri GIS engine was not going to support Silverlight in a few years. We built 2 proofs of concepts, one using the .NET technology, and the other one was a JavaScript version. We would have easily finished 2 years ago. Fortunately, things don't always work out. The project was stopped and started around 6 times. Our team went from 4 to around 20. Millions of dollars were wasted. This past year, our foreman Tane didn't have any work to do, and so we all got laid off. Now in the Esri GIS world, there's a steep learning curve. Our team worked incredibly together. If and when this team has to develop a new system, all the brainpower is gone. There is no one to support the system. Build a prototype of the new USDA GIS system. Build systems based upon HTML5, Angular, Bootstrap, and MVC5. Maintain and adding new features to the USDA farm GIS system. This software has GIS maps for farms all across America, including Alaska and Hawaii. My job has to make the software run faster and more efficient. I also have added more features that the business needed. Craig. I had the pleasure of working with Richard for 2 years at the USDA, where he is a core developer on our GIS system. He has excellent talents across multiple technology platforms that make him a well-rounded developer with both breadth and depth. His ability to offer multiple solutions to every obstacle makes a dramatic difference in the productivity level of our team. His optimism and determination leads the entire team with a can-do attitude. Todd. Working closely with Richard during the past few years, he is always eager and dedicated to any task. Indeed, his lightheartedness and internal optimism ensures a positive work environment and promotes cohesiveness within the team. He constantly delivers complete and competent code on time, seeking out peer reviews to ensure the same and always accepting and open to suggested changes, even if it means throwing away everything and starting over. Ross Short. Richard is a highly skilled developer with 20 plus years of experience. I have been his team lead for 3 years. Richard's knowledge of .NET and expertise in development was a huge advantage to our entire team. He put this skill set to work in order to remediate code defects. Along with his undeniable talent, Richard has always been an absolute joy to work with. He is a true team player and always managed to foster positive discussions and bring the best out of other employees. Built whatscooking.treasures.com, a worldwide ethnic recipe website, allows the user to use the smartphone as a device for grocery lists and planning meals for the day, week, or month. Each recipe calculates nutritional information from the USDA database. Capability to search for recipes by nutritional content, author, and many other unique criteria. One of the only sites on the internet that will allow the user to search by nutritional content. Added around 100 new ethnic ingredients to the USDA database. Built site and added over 700 recipes from our worldwide collection of recipes. Built site to accommodate smartphones and standard web applications. This is my pride and joy. I've collected recipes from my travels from all around the world. During the 80s and 90s, I built a real simple database to hold my recipes. Years later, I worked as a contractor for the USDA. They had a nutritional database that contained all the nutritional information for thousands of food. This database was free to the public. I incorporated this database into my system. I always learned through building. None of my past employers were using MVC, a new framework for the .NET platform. So I learned it and used the latest technologies into my project. Here's some info directly on my site, Why to Register. Here are some of the benefits. It's free. Our goal is to provide you with quick and easy tools to assist you in all areas of cooking. Each recipe has a nutritional label that you can use for a healthy and tasty recipe. Using your smartphone, you can have a shopping list for each recipe on hand while shopping at the store. While you're making the recipe, your smartphone will help you prepare your meal by easy-to-use directions. Most of the recipes take less than 30 minutes. It's a great and easy way to share and discover new recipes. Since 2009, I've been laid off 5 times. Before that, I never got laid off. The first time with Charles Schwab was quite the shock. I really felt it. I thought I survived getting laid off. A good friend of mine got laid off early in the morning, and it was after lunch I got the phone call. It's ever so common now, nowadays, that companies lay people off. What is happening in America? Millions of people are getting laid off, and their families and lives are dramatically changed. There's no loyalty involved. My boss, who laid me off, got laid off when he was a certain age. Probably the person who laid him off will get laid off. Human beings are not some objects who you can hire and fire. Each human being is precious. Why don't Americans have employees on the board of directors? Why is it the entire company directed towards making profits for the shareholders? Have we lost our sense of morality and ethics in our corporate culture? I see each time I got laid off, it was easy to recover. Been there, done that. Yet, do we really need to go through this? When I got laid off from Schwab, they made a tremendous profit. Is the company more interested in profits than the welfare of their employees? There must be a balance. Employees are spending more time at work than their families, and yet the company still will lay them off. In all the layoffs I've seen, I really didn't see a real reason to lay people off. The company could have taken a financial hit without laying people off. I have yet to see my salary equal to what my salary was 8 years ago. So many Americans are going backwards in salary, while the 1%ers are having huge increase in wealth.
How quantum computing could transform everything, everywhere, but not all at once, by Alan Boyle on April 30th, 2023. Quantum computing could change our perspective on the cosmos. What does quantum computing have in common with the Oscar-winning movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once? One is a mind-blowing work of fiction, while the other is an emerging frontier in computer science. But both of them deal with rearrangements of particles in supposition that can't match our usual view of reality. Fortunately, theoretical physicist Michio Kaku has provided a guidebook to the real-life frontier titled Quantum Supremacy: How the Quantum Computer Revolution Will Change Everything. We're talking about the next generation of computers that are going to replace digital computers, Kaku says in the latest episode of the Fiction Series Science Podcast. Today, for example, we don't use the abacus anymore in Asia. In the future, we'll view digital computers like we view the abacus. Old-fashioned, obsolete. This is for the garbage can. That's how the future is going to evolve. Computer scientists might take issue with Kaku's digital doomsaying, but there's little doubt that quantum computers will transform the field as much as artificial intelligence is transforming it today. Quantum computing could very well revolutionize what an Amazon Web Service what Microsoft Azure will want to do for the world in terms of computing, says Luis Termilio, Assistant Laboratory Director for Physical and Computational Science at the U.S. Department of Energy, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Kaku's assessment of the potential impact goes a lot further. In his view, any problem that involves sifting through a multiverse worth of possibilities will become more solvable once the quantum revolution takes hold. Energy generation and storage, food production, climate modeling, disease treatment, and genetic repair all are potential targets for quantum supremacy. Why is that? In contrast to the right one or zero approach that serves as the foundation of classical computing, quantum computers would take advantage of the fact that quantum bits, better known as qubits, can represent multiple states when information is processed. Quantum computers, in principle, are infinitely more powerful than a digital computer that computes on zeros and ones. Zeros and ones become quantum computers or quantum mechanical, he says. The atom can spin in any direction. How many directions are there? An infinite number of directions. Tech titans haven't yet settled on the best basics for quantum computing. Amazon, Google, and IBM use superconducting circuits in their hardware, IonQ, which is creating a research and manufacture facility in the Seattle area. Favors a technology based on trapped ions. Other companies are taking advantage of the quantum properties of photons or defects in silicon lattices. And Microsoft is placing its bets on topological superconducting nanowires. Which technology will win out? Kaku says it's too early to tell. How many quantum computer architects are possible? An infinite number of them, he says. Now, of course, only a handful of them are practical and economical, but the point I'm raising is that Mother Nature has already devised millions of quantum mechanical systems, and we're playing catch up to Mother Nature. And so I think that one day, one or a handful of these technologies will dominate the whole field, but we're not sure yet. Quantum supremacy. How the Quantum Computer Revolution Will Change Everything by Michio Kaku. Even though full-fledged quantum computers aren't yet ready to prime time, researchers are already trying to figure out how to simulate the quantum mechanisms behind important biological processes such as photosynthesis and nitrogen fixation. Coming up with new molecular methods to perform these tasks could be worth billions of dollars. About 1% or so of the world's energy goes to the process to refine nitrogen in the air to create fertilizer, Kaku says. But it's very wasteful. We need a quantum mechanical green revolution. On the energy frontier, quantum computers could help engineers design better reactors for generating fusion power and help chemists design new types of material for solar cells and batteries. Kaku says chemistry is a prime target for the quantum revolution. Chemists who do not use quantum computers to model chemical reactions will go bankrupt, he says. They'll be out of a job. They'll be replaced by chemists who do use quantum computers. This means all medicine can eventually be reduced to a quantum computer. Once quantum computers take hold, researchers could design synthetic molecules for medicines that address specific maladies. How do we find new drugs today? Trial and error, Kaku says. We have thousands of petri dishes with chemicals in them. We tediously see whether or not they have any antibiotic properties. Why not do that in the memory of a quantum computer? Quantum calculations could also direct the course of gene editing theories with the potential of heading off diseases before they arise, an application that raises hopes as well as ethical concerns. Any discipline that requires the use of molecules and atoms can be helped by the quantum revolution, including cancer research, aging, why do we die? Think about it for a moment. There are 0 laws of physics that say that we have to die, Kaku says. Doesn't immortality run counter to the second law of thermodynamics? If I have an open system and I use quantum computers to add extra energy from outside, I can begin the process of stopping the aging process, Kaku says. Think about that. The possibility of extending the human lifespan by reducing the buildup of errors in our DNA. The applications are endless. He's even hoping that the next generation computing will help him solve the mysteries of string theory and reveal the so-called theory of everything, which Kaku calls the God equation. That hope is what led him to write Quantum Supremacy in the first place. Kaku has been working on string theory for decades, and he's the author of one of the leading textbooks about it. But he says the theory is so complicated, with so many resources, that the human mind has not been able to solve string theory. What a frustrating thing, he says. So I said to myself, wait a minute. String theory is a quantum theory like the atom. Why not use quantum computers to solve a quantum problem? By now, you've probably gotten the message that Kaku is bullish on the quantum revolution. Is he willing to admit there's something that quantum computers can't do? Yes, as a matter of fact. If a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once makes you look at as you go back and forth between quantum universes, Kaku says you should know that's pure fiction. It doesn't work like that, he says. It turns out it takes an enormous amount of energy and time to go beyond universes. So believe it or not, it may be possible to go between universes, but it's not for us. In other words, not even the quantum computer
An historic
milestone can change silicon quantum computer just exceeded 99% accuracy. A major milestone has been reached in quantum computing. 3 separate teams around the world have passed the 99% accuracy threshold for silicon-based quantum computing, placing error-free quantum operations within tantalizing grasp. In Australia, a team led by physicist Andrew Morello of the University of New South Wales achieves 99.95% accuracy with 1 qubit operations and 99.37% for 2 qubit operations in a 3 qubit system. In the Netherlands, a team led by physicist Sergio Tahuda of Delft University of Technology achieved 99.89% accuracy for 1 qubit operation and 99.65% for 2 qubit operations in quantum dots. Finally, in Japan, a team led by physicist Akito Nori Ariken achieved 99.84% accuracy for 1 qubit operations and 99.51% for 2 qubit operations, also in quantum dots. All three teams have published their results in the journal Nature Today. Today's publication in Nature shows our operations were 99% energy-free, error-free, Morello says. When the errors are so rare, it becomes possible to detect them and correct them when they occur. This shows that it's possible to build quantum computers that have enough scale and enough power to handle meaningful computation. Quantum computing relies on quantum mechanics as the basics for operation. Information is encoded in qubits or quantum bits, the quantum computing equivalent of binary bits, the basic units of information. However, when bits process information in one of two states, a 1 or a 0, a qubit can be in a state of 1, a 0, or both simultaneously. The later state, 1 and 0 at the same time, is known as superposition. Maintaining the qubits superposition enables quantum computers to solve complex mathematical problems by running calculations based on the probability of an object's state before it is measured. This endeavor is highly prone to error, however, and improving the fidelity of quantum operations has been the subject of intense study. In 2014, Morello and his colleagues were able to demonstrate a whopping 35-second lifespan for quantum information in a silicon substitute. Their qubits were based on the spin state of nuclei, which isolated from their environment, enabled the setting of a new time benchmark. But that very isolation proved a problem too. It made it harder for the qubits to communicate with each other, which is necessary for performing quantum computation. To resolve this issue, Morello and team introduced an electron to their system of two phosphorus nuclei via ion implementation into the silicon, one of the fundamental processes for making microchips. This is how they create their 3-qubit system. How it worked. If you have two nuclei that are connected to the same electron, you can make them do a quantum operation, says physicist Matusser Majestic of UNSW. When you don't operate the electron, these nuclear safety state their quantum information. But now you have the option of making them talk to each other via the electron. To realize universal quantum operations that can be adapted to any computational problem. The other two teams took a different approach. They created quantum dots of silicon and silicon germanium alloy and installed a 2-electron qubit gate that is a circuit of multiple qubits. Then they tweaked the voltage applied to the respective systems using a protocol called gate set tomographically to characterize their systems. Both teams found that they too had achieved higher than 99% fidelity in their system. The presented results makes spin qubits for the first time, competing against superconducting circuits and ion traps in terms of universal quantum control performance, says Tarua. This study demonstrates that silicon quantum computers are promising candidates along with superconductivity and ion traps for research and developments towards the realization of large-scale quantum computers. Any one of these papers alone would be a significant achievement. The fact that all three teams have reached the same milestones independently suggests that quantum computing will now be surging ahead. You typically need error rates below 1% to apply quantum error correction protocols, Morello says. Now, having achieved this goal, we can start designing silicon quantum processors that scale up and operate reliably for useful calculations. The three papers have been published in Nature. Quantum computing, pros and cons. Introduction. In this area of supercomputers, quantum computing is considered as the next big thing. It has been theorized that quantum computers will take a huge leap over the supercomputers. To put this into perspective, supercomputers have achieved a peak performance of around 200 petaflops, or 200,000 trillions calculation per second. Quantum computers will be able to achieve 1 billion times more performance power. Ideology. A quantum computer will be able to perform any task that a classic computer is able to perform. Although there is a catch. If you use classical algorithms on a quantum computer, it will simply perform the calculations in a similar manner to a classical computer. For a quantum computer to be utilized to its full potential, quantum algorithms need to be formulated. Quantum algorithms can exploit the phenomena of quantum parallelization. These algorithms are not easy to create, requiring a lot of research and development. A well-known example for one of these algorithms is the quantum factorization algorithm created by Peter Shor of AT&T Bell Laboratories. What the algorithm does is to tackle the problem of factoring large numbers into its prime numbers. This task is classical, very difficult to solve based on current technology. Shor's algorithm directly uses the effects of quantum parallelization to give the results of the prime factorization problem in a matter of seconds. Pros of quantum computing. 1. Speed. Quantum computers are substantially quicker than conventional computers at some sort of computations, particularly when factoring big numbers and modeling quantum processes. 2. Parallelism. Due to the simultaneous processing of many calculations by quantum computers, certain types of problems can be solved much more quickly. 3. Large-scale optimization. Compared to conventional algorithms, quantum algorithms are faster and more accurate at solving complex optimizational issues. 4. Simulating quantum systems. A quantum computer can be used to simulate quantum systems more effectively and precisely than conventional computers, since it is based on the idea of quantum physics. Cryptology. Quantum computers have the ability to crack some of the encryption used by conventional computers, but they also present fresh possibilities for private communication. Cons of quantum computing. 1. Hardware. The size and stability of existing quantum computers are constrained, and developing a large-scale, dependable quantum computer is a big engineering problem. 2. Software. The field of creating quantum algorithms and software is still developing, and qualified professionals are in short supply. 3. Cost. Building and maintaining quantum computers is currently relatively expensive, and this may prevent widespread deployment. 4. Noise and mistakes. Compared to conventional computers, quantum computers are more prone to noise and faults, and fixing these errors is a difficult task. 5. Scalability. At the moment, quantum computers are only partially scalable, and it is unclear how to construct a robust, large-scale quantum computer that is capable of solving complex problems. 6. Interoperability. Due to the lack of standards in the realm of quantum computing, it might be challenging to compare and combine various quantum computers. Conclusion. A classical computer would take, in some case, more than the age of the universe to produce a result. It is clear that breakthroughs are required not just in technology, but also in algorithm, and we do require other supporting technologies, such as leverage of machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, cloud computing,
great
to
leaders
accelerate
use
quantum
the 100-0
computing
rule
to improve engagement, productivity, and performances. You know the old 3 positives for every negative leisure advice? Forget it. Researchers show it doesn't work. I've always wondered why it's okay for coaches to yell at players. It seems even more odd that no one watching seems to care. Imagine the outrage if a manager screamed at a sales clerk for not approaching customers quickly enough. A video, somehow, there's always a video, would appear on social media. Within minutes, countless people would chime in, vowing to never shop at that store again. Yet clearly, most coaches believe you would certainly hope the behavior stems from a reasoned decision, since the salary investments and financial returns for the organization that results from winning are so high that beranging, criticizing, and screaming at players works. But they're wrong. A study published in the Journey of Sports Behavior found that verbal aggression, think yelling at, not yelling to, as in call timeout, was negatively related to motivation and effect. Nor were negative behavior alteration techniques, character attacks, competence attacks, teasing, ridicule, threats, profanity, etc., in any way effective. In fact, a review of a series of studies failed to find a single instance where verbal aggression was related to any positive outcomes or consequences. So, yeah, in sports, no matter how widespread or accepting, criticizing people doesn't work, nor in nearly any situation. A 2020 study published in Educational Psychology found that students instinctively tune out feedback that makes them feel bad and tune into feedback that makes them feel good. In fact, the more frequently students are praised and less often they are criticized in social psychology terms, the greater the praise to reprimand ratio, the higher their on-task behavior. A 4-to-1 ratio of positive to negative feedback, that's good. A 5-to-1 ratio, that's better. In fact, there is no maximum threshold for the praise to reprimand ratio. The more praise received, the more on-task students become. And then there's this. A 2020 study published in American Economics Review found that 99% of people remember positive feedback a month later, but only 35% actually remember negative feedback. As the researchers write, we established that positive feedback has a persistent effect on beliefs Negative feedback instead influences beliefs in the short run, but this effect fades over time. Or in non-researcher space, yelling at me might make me do something different right now, but definitely not forever. In part, there is a defense mechanism. No one likes to think poorly of himself. So when we instinctively suppress and forget negative feedback, but most likely that's because research also shows that people who yell at other people are seen as less credible. Tell me in a calm, reasonable way how I can improve. I'll listen. And remember, yell at me, tell me I'm slow or stupid, threaten me, no matter how accurate the feedback might be. The only thing I remember is that you were a jerk. And even if you're calm and reasonable, the behavior modification outcomes that result from delivering negative feedback only last for a short time. That's why smart leaders rarely give negative feedback. They praise positive behaviors. They catch people doing things well. They make people want to live up to how you see them and how they want to see themselves. And when smart leaders do need to make corrections, they focus on the behavior, not the person. They show how to do a task differently. They explain why a different approach might be more effective. They don't criticize, they coach and guide and train. So forget the 4-to-1 ratio of praise to criticism. Go 100 to 0. Your employees and your businesses
Western
will
science
thank you
has
for
just
it.
arrived at the understanding that there is, in fact, a field of intelligent energy that connects everything, certainly in our world, and it's believed beyond our world, even the entire universe. Our science is only now arrived at the understanding through the experiments and through the studies and the modeling of the equations that tell us, in fact, that field exists. So this is the place where we are now, and it's the place where the ancient, the indigenous traditions have always begun. They have always started from the place that we are part of everything, that we are part of a greater existence, that everything is connected. And they have devoted their time, rather than trying to explore and prove to themselves this existence really is there, they devoted their times to understanding how to work within this existence. What does it mean to life and death? What does it mean to our time together in this world? If this field is really out there, can we communicate with it? And if we can, what is the language that it understands? Well, the understandings in terms of Western science that this intelligent field exists in late 1990s, early 2000s is when the experiments actually confirmed what Max Planck in 1944 stated. The father of quantum physics, Max Planck, actually said that the matter that we see in our world doesn't exist. It says the stuff we're made out of doesn't even exist, and the world that we see doesn't exist the way we believe it does. What he said was what we see as matter is here because of the existence of what he called a conscious and intelligent mind. And these are his precise words. And he followed that statement by saying that underlying this mind is the matrix of all matter. And this is the coin he termed in 1944. Of course, the movie series was based on the studies that came afterward, but it's actually been around since the mid-20th century. So this field, the matrix, or the divine matrix as it now is being called, is recognized as the field of intelligent, non-conventional energy. It doesn't work the way electricity or broadcast energy works. And perhaps that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for science to catch up with the fact that this is there, because our equipment isn't built to detect this kind of energy. On the one hand, the other hand, these ancient indigenous cultures, they detected it through the equipment of their bodies. They understood how to sense and feel and work and move in this field. So for me, I was trained as a scientist. And in my training, there was never an allowance for the possibility this field could exist. As a matter of fact, in the last 100 years, science has missed the mark twice. in terms of their explanation, the story that science gives of how our world works. And we're now paying the price for where science got it wrong, essentially. And it's coming full circle. It's being corrected. But the first place that this happened was with the belief that the space between things is empty. And now we know that nothing could be further from the truth. There's a lot going on in what we always thought was empty space, but from the experiments that were performed in 1887, very famous Michelson-Morley experiments, to detect whether or not this field was there, when those experiments were interpreted as proving that the field wasn't there, over 100 years ago, from that point forward, our science has been based in the belief that everything is separate from everything else. What happens in one place doesn't have any effect on anything else. And that what happens in this lifetime has nothing to do with any other lifetimes. And when we leave our bodies, there's nothing for our souls to travel into. And this is going to be important as we talk about some of the implications of our time in history and where we're going. So this is the first principle where they got it wrong. And the second was that science, Western science, has believed firmly that the experiences that we have inside of our bodies, our thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, our prayers, our affirmations, in here have no effect on the world beyond our bodies. And now we know that these two assumptions are flat wrong. There is something in the nothing, and we do have the ability through our hearts, what is called coherent heart-based emotion, to create the fields in our bodies, the fields of our beliefs, of our thought, feelings, and emotions that extend beyond our bodies into the divine matrix. So when people ask, what is the divine matrix? The way to answer that, it is the container for the entire universe. As far as scientists understand right now, everything that happens in this universe and in the higher dimensions of this universe are all within the context of this field, number one. Number two, that the divine matrix is a bridge between our inner and our outer worlds. It's the conduit that allows our prayers and our good wishes for one another to move from our hearts into this field and be disseminated and distributed in the field in ways that we're only beginning to understand, in ways that appear to defy the laws of physics as we understand them today. And that's exciting. And number three, this field appears to be a mirror in that the quantum soup of all possibilities, if you will, that exists as this field will mirror back to us. It's like a large projection screen that's everywhere all the time. It will mirror back to us what we claim to be true in our heartfelt beliefs, not what we speak as our truth, rather what we truly feel is the reality of the way our lives work, our relationships, the way our worlds work. What we hold in our hearts is our truth. This field will mirror it back, and where this gets really interesting is sometimes those truths that we hold are unconscious truths, and we're not even aware of what it is that we truly believe. We know what we like to think we believe, but what we truly believe in our hearts sometimes is masked even to us. And it is through the wisdom of recognizing what the world brings to us in our everyday lives, our relationships, our abundance, our health, our romance or lack thereof, all of those things. Those are all mirrors, and the mirrors don't lie. They're mirrors in this divine matrix showing us our true beliefs, what we claim to be true of ourselves and the world, our limits and our capabilities. This field, the divine matrix, of the many ways that scientists now describe the field and what makes it so significant in our lives is the fact that number one, through this field, all matter appears to be connected. And the word that science is using for this connection now is called entanglement. What entanglement suggests is that when something happens in one place in this field, in the divine matrix, it can be in another room next to us, it can be halfway around the world, that the effects of that something can be felt almost everywhere simultaneously. So let me just describe what I mean by that a little bit. There was a very famous experiment that was done in 1997, made the cover of the scientific journals, but it never made mainstream public media. And I think here's the reason why. It sounded like a very technical experiment. What scientists did at the University of Geneva was they took a particle of the stuff our world is made of. It's called a photon, a little packet of light, particle of light, if you will. And they wanted two identical particles. So they took this one photon and they broke it into two, so both pieces had the same properties. And they had a specialized device where they could fire these in opposite directions at the same time, 7 miles for one particle in one direction, 7 miles in the other direction. When they reach their destinations, they're now 14 miles apart. They're using fiber optic cables to do this. And once those particles are at their destination, they can begin the experiments. And what they found was whatever they would do to one particle, in a moment in time, the other one acted like it just had the experience faster than it could have if this one were transmitting the information to the other one. Sometimes this one would act like it was having the experience before this one even finished its experience. They said they were tickling or disturbing the particles. They would change the charge or change the spin rate or force the particle to go take path A or path B. But whatever they were doing over here, this particle always had the identical experience, as if they were still connected even though they were physically separate. And the reason this experiment is so important is it is now demonstrating to the scientific mind what the ancient indigenous traditions have always said, and that is once matter is physically connected, even though it may become separate and distant from where it was originally, it's always linked energetically. Always linked energetically. And here's why that's important. Because we live in a universe many light years in diameter, and we're made of particles that were once all converged into a single unit, a matter of fractions of a second after what's called the Big Bang, what scientists believe is the beginning of our universe. So if you could take all of the space out from between all the particles in our entire universe, many light years distant, and bring all those particles back together, scientists say that we would take up about the space of a single green pea, very compact, very hot particles of matter. And this is where we were at one time, the particles of your body and our listeners and my body. We were once part of all the stars, and we were once part of this Big Bang. And if we were once connected, even though we are now physically separate, the experiments suggest that the energy connecting us remains. And when I began to understand that as a scientist, it helped me to understand when I hear the ancient and the indigenous people say, we're all connected, we're all one, suddenly it began to make sense. Because my mind needed something to hang that nice thought upon. I wanted it to be true. I just didn't know, in my training as a scientist, there was nothing that led me to believe that it could really be true. So the entanglement is one of the descriptions of the nature of this relationship. The second is what is called a hologram or a holographic principle. And I wanted to lay the foundation so we could share both of these together. In a hologram, the definition of a hologram is that every piece of something mirrors the entire something, no matter how large or how small that is. So I'd like to give an example of what that means. I'm a very visual person to help illustrate this. Back in the 1980s, there was a series of bookmarks that came out in the New Thought community. Little shiny strips of foil that had images that were put there with a holographic process. And if you held them in the light just right, you would see that image actually come alive. It looked like it was hovering above your hand. And there was an image of the face of Jesus and Mother Mary, and there was one of a great pyramid and the dolphin and a rose unfolding. There are a number of them out there. Those little bookmarks, if you have one, you can do an experiment, but you can only do it once because it'll destroy your bookmark in the process. But if it's truly a holographic bookmark, you can take that bookmark and you can cut it into a bajillion little pieces with a pair of scissors. And you can take the smallest one of those pieces, a little fleck under a microscope, with an X-Acto knife and cut it in half, even again, and take that little fleck and look at it under magnification, and you'll still see the entire image in that fleck, no matter how small, no matter what shape it is. And this is, by definition, this is the holographic principle. Every piece of the something contains the entire something on a different scale of magnitude. And this is important because it is now believed that we are holographic in nature, that we mirror all that there is in this universe, that the universe is holographic in nature. William Blake said this so beautifully in his poem. He said, the entire world is reflected in a grain of sand. And it's more than a nice poetic saying. There's truly something to this fact. And it is through the holographic principle that nature, it's one of the most powerful principles in nature and perhaps one of the least understood, because it is through the principle of the hologram and the entanglement that nature can create a lot of change in the entire universe by initiating that change in only one place. Because by definition of the hologram, every fragment mirrors the whole. So when a change is made in one fragment, that change is mirrored in the whole of a living hologram. That's important for us because it says to us that when we create peace at our family dinner table or in our communities, for example, that peace is experienced in the hologram of consciousness of the divine matrix in a way that extends much more than simply, or is not simply limited to our family dinner table or our prayer group. And this is why our prayers, people ask me all the time, they say, if I am praying for my loved one in the battlefield of Iraq halfway around the world, I can make a really good prayer, but how do I get the prayer over there? I mean, it's got to go a long ways. How do I get my prayer from here to there? And this is the beauty of the hologram. In the two particles that were separated by 14 miles, when one of them had its experience and the other one acted like it had its experience, scientists say, how did the information get from one to another? And in the hologram, the answer is it doesn't have to, because it's already there. The information doesn't have to travel because it's already everywhere all the time. Our prayers, when we create them in our hearts for our loved ones, are already with them on that battlefield halfway around the world. When we speak to our loved ones who have passed over into another world, what we're actually doing is we are speaking to the essence, their energetic essence, that is now within the layers or the higher dimensions of this divine matrix. And we don't have to pump or send our prayers into the 8th dimension or the 9th dimension by virtue of being in our hearts, because we exist in those dimensions as well. It's already with them. The whole idea of dimensionality, 25 years ago, as a scientist, if I walked onto a stage and talked about anything in a live audience, talked about anything happening in higher dimensional state spaces, there's a good chance I'd be laughed right off the stage. And now, because scientists simply didn't acknowledge or mention much more than the 3 or 4 dimensions that we deal with now, third dimension is our physical world, and the 4th dimension being time and time-space. There are a number of new theories that scientists are developing to explain and unify the laws of physics as we know them today. And this has been the great challenge of Western science, is we haven't been able to come up with one story that explains the entire universe, because our stories are fragmented. The mathematical stories of quantum physics or the mathematical stories of Newtonian physics, they don't mesh. They cannot work together to give us a coherent understanding of the universe. And where this may be changing now is scientists have come up with new theories, a number of different theories that are actually able to merge quantum mechanics and the Newtonian theories together. The quantum theory saying that we live in a universe of energy, and the Newtonian theory saying we live in a universe of things. And it's the mathematics that describe the energy and the things they're trying to link together. Well, the new theories are called string theories. And although there are a number of different string theories, 11 at least, there is now a superstring theory that brings them all together. And the reason I'm saying this, what makes it so interesting, is for these theories to work and to unify the quantum mechanics and the Newtonian mechanics and the physical and the energetic world. To do that, the theories require that we live in a universe of at least 11 dimensions and very possibly 25 dimensions. They say they must be there for these theories to work. And what's so interesting is the higher you go in the dimensions, the simpler the mathematics become. And where everything looks separate in our 3-dimensional world, in our polarity world, everything is. We live in a world of pluses and minuses, men and women, light and dark, hot and cold, black and white, true and false, love and fear. We live in this polarity world, and this is where the mathematics do not work, and I would expect that they wouldn't work here, because everything here is in that separateness. However, the beauty of these new theories and the way that they tie into the ancient and the indigenous traditions, both of life and death, and life continuing after death, what we call the death, is that they require this higher dimensional experience. And the higher you go in these dimensions, the mathematics become simpler and simpler and simpler, and they actually unify in the higher dimensions. Very, very simple mathematics. And the reason this is interesting is because what the studies now have shown is that when you and I have a feeling, coherent heart-based emotion in our feelings, those emotions are actually coherent. They're linked, they're in resonance with these higher dimensions where everything is one. So when we're having an effect, when we have a feeling and we see a physical effect in our world, it's not that our feeling changed something in this three-dimensional world. Rather, our feelings are speaking to the blueprint in the higher dimensions, and we're seeing the shadow of that change in our physical world. And this, to me, tremendous implications in terms of life and death, our soul, the seat of the soul, where do we come from, where do we go in between lives, where do we go after we die, do animals have souls? All of these questions, these understandings now are bridging the language of science and the language of spirituality. And the ancient and the indigenous traditions have been here for 8,000 years in a very exciting new way that gives us this very holistic picture of who we are and how we relate to one another and what life is really all about. To me, that's very exciting as well. A growing number of mainstream scientists within just the last 2 years, this is now 2007, so 2006, early 2007, a growing number of mainstream scientists are now putting forward an idea that is gaining tremendous momentum regarding consciousness, who we are in consciousness, the nature of our physical reality, and how things really work. And when we first hear about this idea, it almost sounds like science fiction. And then we ask, where does science fiction come from? Many times it comes from the intuitive hit of how the world works and what's possible, and then it becomes the reality of our world. What these scientists are saying, MIT scientist Seth Lloyd, for example, in his 2000 book, Programming the Universe, literally is proposing that our entire universe and consciousness is either a computer in and of itself, that the universe is a quantum computer. This is what they're saying. Or if the universe is not a quantum computer, that the universe is the simulation that is being run on a big computer somewhere. And when I first began to hear this, at first as a scientist, I think, this sounds pretty out there. But I began to explore why mainstream physicists would, at leading universities, would begin to look at things this way. In my training, I was a senior computer systems designer for Martin Marietta Aerospace during the Cold War years. So, of course, it's my language. But the more I began to understand, and I looked at the comparisons, every computer has a language that it uses to get things done. Consciousness is the operating system of this universal computer, and belief is the language that it recognizes. Every computer turns bits of information off and on to make things happen. And I said, well, in the universe, we don't have bits. And I began looking at the comparisons, and they're looking at literally the stuff our world is made of. The atoms are the bits. When the atoms are turned on and in physical existence, they are reality. When they are not turned on, they are unatoms or anti-atoms or antimatter that are not in existence. And they're taking this so seriously, this proposition that we may literally be living a simulation of some kind, that they've done mathematical modeling to determine the probability that we are or are not living a simulation. And the mathematics suggest strongly that we are living in a simulation. And the reason I'm mentioning this here, and I know it's a very different way of thinking about things. It sounds like the movie The Matrix, but where did that come from? The reason that this is important is because when we begin talking about the soul, what the ancient indigenous traditions say to us is that while a part of our soul speaks and experiences through this body, we're not really here at all. That our higher self is a part of a greater existence, and we always go like this, it's somewhere else expressing through this body. We've just come back from a tour in Australia, and the Aboriginals in Australia, as well as many other traditions, say this isn't the real world, this is the illusionary world. And they spend more of their time in what they believe is the real world, and what we would call the dream state. So all of this ties together when we talk about life and death, existence, consciousness between lifetimes. Where do we go when we leave this body? From the perspective of these new ways of seeing things from physicists and quantum physicists who are looking at this as a simulation. It's when our part of the simulation is over. It doesn't mean that we are gone forever. It just means that we're no longer expressing here, and we're in those higher dimensions wherever this simulation is being run from. So it is a fascinating concept, and the more we begin to explore it, and when you look at the mathematics and they plug in all the variables, they say it's more likely than not that we are actually living in a universe that is the result of a massive simulation that's being run from somewhere else. Sounds like a Star Trek episode. Seth Lloyd is the man, the MIT physics professor, who's developed the first feasible, viable quantum computer. And he said even in the infancy of our computers, a quantum computer is so powerful, it wouldn't take much more to model an entire universe on a quantum computer. And the thinking is that who or whatever is responsible for the simulation is probably light years ahead of us in terms of technology. So to believe that they may have quantum computers that could manipulate the bits of matter. And it sounds very technical in some respects, and it stretches us in some respects. And that's the purpose of films like this. We're looking for new ideas, new ways to think out of the box, whether it is a reality or even if it's only a metaphor. Even if we only use this as a metaphor, it's a powerful metaphor that allows us to hang our beliefs upon, because whether it is a physical reality or a metaphor that we live in a simulation, the bottom line is this, that if we understand the language that this reality recognizes, then we are no longer limited by the laws, the relative laws of physics as we know them. It means that we no longer have to suffer in our lives or age, or we don't have to have the poverty and the disease. We don't have to have the war. If we understand the language, then we literally can rewrite the reality code that runs our real or metaphoric simulation. And to me, we need some new ideas to look at the world. Because what we're seeing now is so many people believe there's a single physical reality, and if you want to change it, you've got to go out there and hammer it into submission, militarily, economically, men bumping chests with men, guys with big armies and a lot of power, and we know where that's gotten us. So my feeling is that we need new ways to think about our universe, and this is one of the most powerful and innovative ways that I've seen in a long time, and it's not so new. Just different language, because this is what the ancients have always said. They said, you're not from here, and that we don't live here, and that this world is a dream, and that this world is an illusion. And then it opens up all kinds of questions. If this is a simulation, who's the architect? When did it begin? When does it end? And all of these have implications in terms of life in this world, life after death, life. From this perspective, death just becomes a journey into the homeland of where everything begins, rather than the end of everything that we've ever known. So I can't help but imagine one day if this is either a dream, a simulation, real or metaphorically, we'll just wake up one day and we'll look at each other and we'll say, what were we thinking? What in the world were we thinking when we did all those horrible things to one another? Yeah. But what we now know is, when I was in school and when many of our listeners were in school, we were taught that this is a physical reality made of atoms. And our atoms would look like little solar systems. They were modeled as little solar systems, things in the middle called a nucleus with other things orbiting them like electrons. And those days are long gone. We now look at atoms rather than things orbiting around other things. We look at them as concentrations of energy in space and time, where there are no clear-cut things. Now, where this gets important is that scientists, and this is in the standard physics textbooks, this is no surprise what I'm about to say, is that if you change the field of energy that the atom lives in, you change the atom. You can change that field electrically, or you can change it magnetically. And there are terms for the effects. The Zeeman effect, the Stark effect are well-documented effects of electrical and magnetic changes in the field that change the atom. Where, while it sounds technical and maybe not relevant, where it gets really relevant very fast is our hearts are the strongest bioelectrical and magnetic field generators in our bodies. Our hearts generate stronger electrical fields than our brains. They generate stronger magnetic fields than our brains. Our hearts are 5,000 times as powerful magnetically than our brains. And we hear about EKGs of our hearts. They're up to 100 times stronger than the EEG, the electrical information in our brains. So when we create thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, compassion, prayers of forgiveness in our hearts, that's the words that we call those experiences. But to the field, what we're doing is we're creating electrical and magnetic waves in here that are now known to change the stuff out here. And in that way, we are linked. So when we talk about our universe, possibly as a simulation, it tells us that we are not separate, that we are empowered, not to control or manipulate or impose our will, rather to participate, as Princeton physicist John Wheeler suggests, to participate in the way this reality unfolds, to participate in our personal growth and healing, in the healing of our loved ones, to participate in the peace that happens in our families and between nations. And the little catch is that for us to share the beauty of this participation, we must work together and share those heart fields. And that, I think, is where this learning curve is actually going. And we may not use that language. We don't have to understand all the technical aspects. I mean, people know that when you have a feeling, it may have an effect. But in our Western world, we need our mind, our left brain, our logic needs a framework to hang these very subtle spiritual understandings upon. We'd like to believe them, we just need a reason to believe it, and the reasons are there. If we can take the understandings out of the very technical realm and share them in a language that's relevant to people that don't have that background. Science is only a language. It's a good language. It's only one language that describes our world. And there are many other languages, and I think, for me, this is the value of going into the monasteries of Tibet and Bolivia and Peru and Nepal. We've been in monasteries in Egypt, in their libraries, their records. For 1,500 years, people who have lived the traditions and perpetuated and taught them, because we can look at them. I can look at another human, eye to eye, heart to heart, God to God, in that moment, directly or through a translator. And I can ask them, human to human, I can say, when you just did that miraculous healing, what happened in your body to make that happen? How'd you do that? And if I don't understand what they say, I can ask them again and again and again until they either kick me out of the monastery because they're tired of my questions, or they will answer my question. And in this way, we learn from this 5,000-year-old heritage of our past, and we marry that with the best science of our day today. In the book Small Miracles, there's an amazing story. It's a true story, and I share it with our audiences a lot, of what many people would call a miracle. And for me, it's a demonstration of just how real this field is that connects everything. It's a story of a young Jewish boy. His name was Joey, who at the age, I believe, of 19, suddenly woke up one morning and began to question 5,000 years of Jewish tradition. He began to question all of the things he'd been taught by his family, and his father took it as a personal offense. He said, how can you question this lineage of wisdom and tradition? And Joey said, I've got to go out in the world and find out for myself if these things are true or not. And his father said, if you turn your back on your tradition and you go out in the world and search for yourself, he said, you're no longer my son. I have no son. And Joey said, I've got to do this. And he left. And he went into the world and he studied in the ancient and the Eastern traditions, Buddhist traditions, and the Jewish traditions. And he was in a small cafe, and I believe it was in Paris. And you never know who's going to walk into those cafes. And a friend of his walked in from the States that he hadn't seen since he left. And the first thing his friend said was, "I was so sorry, Joey, to hear about the death of your father." And it was the first Joey knew that his father had died. And so he immediately came back to the States and he began speaking to his father's friends and their neighbors. And what he found is rather than turning his back on his son, his father had done just the opposite. He was so proud of his son for having the strength to question 5,000 years of faith. And he spoke about his son incessantly and honored his son's courage. And this led Joey back into the Jewish tradition that he had left to explore. And it eventually led him in a traditional pilgrimage to the Holy Wall in Jerusalem. And if you've ever seen this wall, you know that it's made out of these massive stone bricks that have been there for so long that the mortar holding them together has fallen out. So where the mortar used to be, there are empty spaces, and the tradition is to inscribe a prayer on a paper or a cloth rolled up and place your prayer into that wall. And this is what Joey was doing. He'd written a prayer to his father asking for his father's forgiveness for the pain that he'd caused and the suffering in the family. And he was pacing back and forth in front of the wall looking for just the right place where he would leave his prayer. And there was a place that caught his eye, and as he was raising his hand to put his prayer into that place, the moment that he did that, another prayer that was already in there somehow magically fell out at his feet. And as he reached down to pick up the prayer that had fallen out, it was already partially unrolled, and he already recognized what was happening here. It was a prayer in his father's handwriting that his father had written before his death and had come to precisely the same place and put in precisely that crevice in the wall that Joey had been drawn to. And as Joey read the prayer, it was a prayer from his father to God, asking for forgiveness for turning his back on his son and how much he really loved his son and how proud of his son he was. And the reason I share the story, for two reasons. First of all, when we hear the story, there's a feeling within us. I feel it every time I share it. That feeling is a language. It's a nonverbal language. And if I just simply said to you or to an audience, have that feeling right now, you might be hard-pressed to do it because there's no reason to have the feeling. But when we hear stories like that, that feeling came from a place of innocence, of emptiness, of non-judgment. You didn't know what was going to happen, but you feel a feeling when you hear that story. Number one. Number two, for Joey to find precisely the crevice in the wall where his father had been months before his death. There obviously, and for him to be there that moment and for that prayer to fall out of the wall at his feet, and this is a true story, there obviously was a communication that was not bound by time or space, or in this case, even life and death. It was a message from beyond his father's life in this world. And for that to happen, there's got to be a conduit that carries that message. That's the divine matrix. That's the field that we're talking about. So we know that our soul, what we call our soul, is an energetic essence. There are a number of studies were done early in the 20th century, even trying to measure at the instant of death how much weight a body loses in their passing. And no matter if the person was a 300-pound man or a 70-pound woman, the amount of weight that they lost, I think it was 28 grams, I believe is what it was the average. It was about the same. A lot of controversy around the studies, and I'm not sure they've been duplicated well. But the key is there is apparently an essence within each of us that is not bound by this world. And when we ask the question in our mind, when that essence leaves our bodies, where does it go? Understanding that we live in a universe of at least 11 and probably 25 dimensions, and that this field of energy is made of a non-conventional field that doesn't work the way electricity or radio waves works. All of a sudden, it's not so far-fetched to believe that we're part of that essence and that we can move and travel and navigate and maneuver through those fields when we're not inhabited or inhabiting our bodies as we know them today. It's giving a whole new meaning to life, death. When the ancients talked about heaven, and their hands always went like this, were those heavens, and there are multiple heavens, were those heavens the higher dimensions? Was heaven the language they used 5,000 years ago for what our male-dominated, schematically oriented, left-brain technological society calls higher dimensional state spaces. Are we talking about the same thing? So this is, again, this is the value of going back into these ancient traditions and looking at the way they looked at the world through their eyes and asking what did they know maybe that we've forgotten. I had the opportunity a few months ago, the last remaining Gnostic sect to survive into the 20th and now the 21st century is a sect called the Mandaeans. And interestingly enough, the location of their home has been the border between Iran and Iraq, right where Gulf War I and Gulf War II rolled right through them. And I was in another country where many of the Mandaeans had fled, and one of the high priests asked to meet with me while we were in this country. And of course I said yes, and he brought with him a scroll that he says is over 6,000 years old. And it was written in Aramaic, which is interesting to me because Aramaic was the language of Jesus, and we're not sure when it actually began. But what was interesting about this scroll, in our biblical traditions, the creation of humankind happens in a couple of sentences in the book of Genesis, because we've got the Reader's Digest condensed version, and a lot of things we know were edited out. In other traditions, such as the Mandaeans, they are in scrolls, so there is column after column, paragraph after paragraph of information describing the creation of the human body first, and how the powers that be then tried to put the soul into the body, suggesting that our soul is in fact separate and comes from somewhere else. And what makes it so interesting is that the first few iterations of humankind could not hold the power of the soul or the spark or the light of God from this higher dimension. And it was only when they perfected the genetic recipe for the bodies that we have now that they could get the soul. And it always says when they created the body of Adam. It's not when he created the body of Adam. When they, indicating that there were multiple people created, or multiple beings, created the body of Adam, they could not get the soul into the body of Adam at first. So into the male body of Adam, they placed the feminine soul from a higher state space. A higher dimension is the way we can interpret this. And it was the marriage of the physical body with the feminine soul that gave Adam his animation and allowed him to become the man that he was, and that either metaphorically or in reality, this is the story that tells us that our bodies and our souls, while they share time together and are merged in this moment, that they are actually separate entities. And when we talk about life and death, here again we find in at least a 6,000-year-old tradition that there's something inside of us that's not from around here, that comes from somewhere else. And we begin to think about our universe and our lives as a simulation. It's saying essentially the same thing, that we're projecting or experiencing through this physical body to find out something here about ourselves in this world that apparently we cannot experience in heaven or in these other worlds. And in these texts, they are what we would call plays of morality. If you live in the 8th dimension and you wake up every morning in the 8th dimension and all there is light, it's easy to live in the light. But if you wake up in this 3rd dimensional world and you've got choices of light and dark and good and bad and right and wrong and males and females and all the things that go with that, then you have to choose. And that's where it gets really interesting. So this is, again, this is the value of going back into some of these ancient traditions, because they had a language that was intact, that describes our universe and who we are in a way that our science is only now beginning to understand. Whether the ideas proposed by the physicists that we are somehow living a simulated reality are real or metaphoric, again, for me, the bottom line is they suggest that we are living in a universe and in a world that we're part of rather than separate from. And as part of our world, we are empowered to participate in our healing and in our abundance and in our peace. And I believe that that may be what this life is all about, recognizing that there's a power within us that allows us to transcend the great suffering and achieve the greatest joys that we could ever want to experience. What that means to me in terms of everyday life is looking at the world around me through new eyes and recognizing that this world is nothing more, nothing less than a mirror of what we claim to be true in our hearts. And if we choose to live in a new world rather than trying to hammer it into submission externally, we can choose in our hearts to feel and believe in ways now that our scientists say actually affect and change the reality of our world through what's called coherent, heart-based emotion. They aren't just thoughts or wishes. Feeling as if our bodies are already healed, feeling as if peace has already happened in our lives, and giving thanks of appreciation and gratitude for whatever time we have together in this world. Because real or simulated, we don't really know how long it lasts or how long we're here. So from my perspective, every day I do my very best, and I ask myself the question, what can I do today to leave every place that I visit a better place than it was than when I got there? And whether it means cleaning up the sink in an airport bathroom before I leave because it looks better when I left than it did when I came in, or when someone stops me in the hall in a very busy conference to talk, and I know I've got to be somewhere else. Am I too busy to talk to them, or can I give them 60 or 90 seconds fully present, fully focused, and honoring, and just say to them, I can only honor you for these moments, and look them in the eye. In that way, these are the little things that we can do in our day. Be fully present with everyone that comes into our lives and crosses our paths, and where we choose to travel and share our energy, leave that place a better place than it was when we left.